excited to hear all about your film and Mrs., which we are screening on the 6th of September, which is really brilliant. So yeah, tell us a little bit about, first of all, what inspired you to even create this film.
To be fair, I've got to say that I directed it. I didn't create it. I had an amazing screenwriter called Melissa Bubnich. But what inspired me to direct the film was, like a lot of Anglo-Saxon boys, I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and you are taught, bottle those emotions, never show an emotion, right? There's a famous Aussie expression, which is take a teaspoon of cement, and harden up. And so I basically didn't cry for probably 30 years, maybe, 20, somewhere between 20 and 30 years. And then one day I got a phone call. I was living in LA, just made my first TV show. It was on a bit of a high. We had Jason Sudeikis, aka Ted Lasso, in it, and a bunch of other big American stars. And my sister called me in pieces. And my mum had just been diagnosed with a rare form of dementia. And sorry, I'm going to be in pieces. It's bad already. But basically, my mum said she was scared, and it was one of the hardest phone calls of my life. A few months later, I got sent this script for and Mrs. And obviously it was like a cork had been pulled out of the bottle, or a thread had been pulled out of me, and suddenly there was just something deeper in me. And even though she wasn't gone yet, there is a huge grief to being told that the person who brought you into the world. Oh, Jesus. It's funny because I did better in my other interviews, but I'm staying in a hotel in Paris, and I moved here when I was 13, down the road.
So many memories.
I'm looking out on the street, and my mum is just so present for me while I'm here. And I'll put it together. So suddenly these emotions were there for me, and the script came in, and it was about love, and it was about the fact that there is a love that lives beyond grief. And here in France, where I am right now, and like I said, I went to high school here. Posthumous marriages are a thing, right? You write to the president, and he can give you permission. 1 in 4 people get knocked back, and it's a beautiful gesture because there's no money. You can't go, Richard Branson cocked it today, I'm going to marry Richard Branson, I'm going to take his money. It's truly a gesture of love. And I guess my point of view on it when reading it was, yes, it's bonkers, right? I get it, to my culture and your culture, that Anglo-Saxon sensibility that we have, the stiff upper lip. But at the same time, I was like, well, is it any more crazy than getting wasted? That's an acceptable form of grief in our culture. It's like, okay, let's get drunk, let's get hammered for weeks. And maybe posthumous marriage is a much healthier way of doing something, if you were engaged to someone. So it hit me at the right time. And then, my mum deteriorated as we put the film together. She literally lost the ability to speak. It's a form of dementia called FTD that Bruce Willis has. And by the time we were set to, we pulled all the cast together and so on and gone out to the studios. My mother died on January 30th, 2022. And obviously, that's the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I can't even imagine what you went through losing your partner, which is, just beyond the pale. And watching my dad, that was something that was very evident to me, that as personal as my grief was with my mum, that for my dad, it's a whole other level. But during that week, as we gathered around her bed, and we were in 24-hour shifts, me and my two sisters, one of us was with her all the time. We also laughed.
Yeah.
And some of the biggest belly laughs of my life were that week as we shared stories about my mum. And my mum, I won't swear, but I will say effing, loved Bette Midler. I mean, obsessed with Bette Midler. And this is so my mum that as we gather around her bed, I made playlists, and it's still shared in my family, called Alma, of her favorite songs. And we were, you know, my sisters are extreme breeders, so they have nine kids between the two of them. And we belted out Bette Midler's The Rose at the top of our lungs with absolutely no tone, tune, or musical ability, which was something we inherited from mum. And we laughed our asses off. And as we were laughing, she opened her eyes, and, you know, it was the last time she did. And that's just so my mum, that she, as we laughed, she opened her eyes, because my mum was a cracker. She was a wildfire. So we laughed, and then a week later, Universal rang and said, the movie's a go. And I have always been a fairly cynical person. And this is a pretty hippy-dippy thing to say, I know. But I mean, it really felt like mum was looking out for us, you know, and wanted me to get this film made. And, you know, it's definitely been a journey, and something that I've been absolutely doggedly determined to get out. And I think what I love about the Good Grief Trust is that you guys are reaching out to people who don't have the skills, because of our culture, who don't have the resources because of our governmental support and structures, and helping them with their grief. And to me, that was my goal with this film. I wanted, you know, we rewrote the film after my mum died, to incorporate all these things that had happened to me and the cast. And I wanted it to be really personal to anyone out there who's going through the absolute muddy trenches that is grief, who feel alone, and are maybe not at the rawest point, because it's probably a bit hard to laugh when it's, you know, that fresh, but are at a point where in their process where they're ready to laugh about it, you know. There you go.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm just so sorry about your mum. Particularly, you said it was during COVID as well, so it must have been that additional level and layer of grief that COVID brought with it as well, with so many people we know suffered a bereavement through that. But yes, the film is hysterical at times. It's completely off the wall. But I think there's the thread that runs through it, which is really important to us at the Good Grief Trust, which is to bust those taboos and to try and get rid of the rules that people think, and the assumptions around grief, and this, we should be grieving this way, or we should be grieving that way. As we know, grief is completely unique, and it's like our DNA, isn't it? And it depends on the relationship that you've had with that person and who you are as a personality, how you're going to grieve. And you don't know that till it happens to you. So this demonstrates that. And there's a really lovely scene, actually, which resonated with us at the Good Grief Trust, with Ashlyn's character and her husband sitting on the bench, because we launched a new campaign last year with people sitting on a bench and connecting and laughing, as you said, and crying, and just normalizing their grief together, really, out in the community. And we've got a plaque there that, you know, you can scan and go straight through to the Good Grief Trust. So I think those scenes on the bench in the cemetery were really poignant for us.
That's great. I'm so glad you said that. I mean, I think that's the word that I loved of what you just said, and I'm going to steal it back, is taboo. The grief is such an oddly taboo subject, right? Like, we have rules and regulations that are unspoken about how you need to deal with grief. You can't laugh about grief. You can't do something, we would consider it mad to marry a dead person, where other cultures would consider it very normal. And that's something that I really wanted to explore with this. And those park bench scenes, I love that you connected with them, because for me, they talk to a truth that we, the grievers, all know, which is they're never gone, right? I mean, I'm not talking like in a phantasmagorical, ghosty way, but like I said to you, I'm in Paris, staying in a hotel on the street where I lived with my mother when I was 13, and I keep just getting waves of her. I look at a spot where we had lunch and I see her. I look at a church where she photographed an old lady, and I was so embarrassed at the time, and I see her, and they never leave you. And that is absolutely beautiful, and I hope she never does.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to sort of raise awareness of, is that you don't move on, you move forward with them. You're not leaving them behind. They come with you because they're part of you. They were part of you, so why not now, just because physically they're not there? So and then also, obviously, it's beautifully shot, because you've got those lovely scenes of London, and which is really beautiful to watch. But I think, again, the characters and how each person, how each family member, how each friend deals with that grief journey, if you like, and how they react to it completely differently is really interesting as well. I think that is really another important message to put out there.
Yeah, thank you again for saying that. It's so kind of you, because I mean, I think thematically that was a key to unlocking the film, is that what you don't realize until you're going through it is that people don't want you to grieve.
Yeah.
They don't want to be confronted with how much this is hitting you. They want you to stiff up a lip, take the teaspoon of cement and harden up, and move on. And in doing research, I read story after story about people where they bottled it, and then someday something pulled the plug out, and they completely broke down, and it can be 20, 25 years later. Yeah. And the only healthy way to process grief is to process grief, is to live with it and acknowledge it, instead of bottling it and moving on. And one of the things that I've talked about quite a bit recently is one of my best mates, great guy, like I said, one of my best mates, and my mum was 82 when she died, and he didn't know what to say. Aussie bloke. Oh, what do I say? And he was like, "Oh, great innings though, mate." Jesus Christ, my mum just died. To me, it's not a great innings. I wanted her around. My 6-month-old daughter will not remember my mother. Yeah. And my then 2-year-old has vague memories, and I constantly am reminding him of her, and also my daughter, to keep her a part of their lives. But to me, it wasn't a great innings at all. But in his defense, those are the tools we're given by our culture, is to say these platitudes.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's what we're trying to help the general public who maybe haven't been through a bereavement themselves to understand the language to use, because it can be really hurtful. And again, that can be another loss, because you can walk away from that friend because you don't think they understand you. You know, people don't pick up the phone, they walk across the road, you know, because they don't know what to say and they think they're going to upset you. But as we know, generally speaking, by talking about that person who's died is probably the best gift you can give to the person who's grieving, you know, because you've remembered them, you're sharing memories. Yeah, you're sharing that time that you spent with them, but maybe they didn't even know about, you know, or photographs pop up. It's such a lovely, comforting thing to do to helping people.
Yeah, look, I think what you said is so wise, you know, and in your analogy, the person who crosses the road, they don't, it's like they feel your grief is contagious. They don't want to be confronted with your emotion. They don't want to have to deal with it, because that's not something we do very well. You know, Anglo-Saxons, we're great at taking the piss, as we say in Australia, and making jokes. Not so great on the emotional stuff. And that's why I think Good Grief Trust is such an incredible organization, the way that you are helping people talk about these things. You know, I'll say my one lesson out of it was, I just wanted people to say to me, this sucks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
This sucks. So whenever I meet someone who's just lost someone, and, you know, the screenings have been so beautiful. Like, I was lucky enough to fly in 106 mad hours to London, New York, and Sydney to do the 3 test screenings. And the film tested off the charts. It was supposed, you know, comedy is supposed to get a 65, it got a 90. And I had these people coming up to me and sharing their stories again and again. And because I had that lesson, I kept saying to them, that sucks. I'm so sorry you've gone through that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's all anyone wants to hear, isn't it? And I think I just hope that everybody will get that from the film. And there's a lovely ending. We won't give it away, but the credits as well, I thought were very, very moving and very touching, that you recognise and acknowledge the grief of the cast and the crew as well at the end of the film. And I think that's really important as well, that everybody who is involved in a project like that is recognised, really, because again, grief is often not acknowledged or recognised. So I think that's a really another lovely side to the film, which we really enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And you know, look, the punchline on the story that I told earlier about you know, the song that was my mum's favorite, which is Bette Midler's "The Rose," which was the song that she opened her eyes to the very last time she opened her eyes. You know, Bette gave us the song for the film.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Gosh. How amazing is that? What an honor for your mom. How lovely.
Yeah. I just, you know, it's such a shame that it took my mum dying for that to happen. The irony. My
Yeah.
mum would, oh my God, she would
Wow.
lose her mind to know that Bette Midler had any clue who Serena Reisinger was.
Wow.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
lovely for you, though. How lovely for you and your family, and to have this legacy and have this piece that means so much to you personally, as well as trying to help other people. So congratulations, really.
Oh, congratulations to you guys. You're
Thanks very
doing an
much.
amazing job with the Good Grief Trust.
Thank you, Daniel.